We are talking Raiga, the monster from the deep sea, also known as深海獣Raiga, also known as Raiga, God of the Monsters. And this is a 2009 low-budget, kind of B-movie-ish kaiju movie, of course from Japan. Now I believe this was actually a spin-off from a previous movie called Reigo, which was a kind of a different monster, but taking place in the kind of the same universe. And I would kind of liken this to like a B-movie version of Godzilla, similar to how you get kind of the Asylum in the US kind of doing mockbusters. It kind of is the Japanese equivalent, it would seem. So this takes place in kind of a Japanese city, not Tokyo, however, and it is attacked by a Godzilla-like monster called Reigo that ultimately kind of destroys some of the city, and it's kind of fended off initially by the military, and then comes back for a kind of second go later on in the movie, and then there's a second monster pops up as well. In the meantime, it kind of primarily follows this kind of family, this guy and his kind of three daughters, as they try and profit from kind of selling merchandise of Raiga and various other kind of personal issues. What all happened? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So this is kind of almost like a spoof to a certain degree, certainly a comedic tone, very, very light. It almost feels like a cartoon in many ways, although it is obviously a live-action movie. Or at least the human elements seem to be very, very cartoonish, pantomime-ish, if you will. Now, what do we think works in this movie? Now, like I said, this is clearly a lower budget movie compared to your mainstream kind of Godzilla fare and things like that. But nonetheless, you know, it's that classic kind of man in a suit style, 1950s style kind of kaiju monster. And I gotta say, I quite liked it. You know, I quite like this kind of guy in this suit. The costume looks quite fun. It kind of looks like Godzilla. I mean, it more or less kind of looks the same, outside of a little bit of colour difference. But he's got the kind of the spine on his back, and he shoots kind of electricity and etc, etc. He's got these big kind of like claw things, but ostensibly it's more or less kind of Godzilla. You know, so it is what it is, I suppose. Like I say, maybe this is kind of more a mockbuster. You know, the actual creature itself is kind of realised practically with a man in a suit, and we have various kind of models and stuff like that, although it is enhanced by CGI and kind of video effects, which, you know, they look cheap. There's no kind of getting around it. But if you just want carnage and chaos on screen, then you may enjoy this. The movie, as I've mentioned, is a kind of comedy. It's a sci-fi comedy, I guess you would say. And there are a couple of jokes that I did find kind of funny here and there. Now, comedy is certainly subjective, and when you're coming at it from a different kind of culture, it may be even more of a stark kind of contrast about what you like. But there were a few jokes that I enjoyed. There's a couple of American tourists that mistakenly refer to Raiga as Godzilla, and they're corrected by the kind of the Japanese people there. There's a scene where like a modern art kind of piece gets knocked over, and they go, "What's that shit?" And it goes, "Oh, it's modern art, so it's kind of shit then." Things like this. There's a guy who's crying, and some gal offers him like a napkin to wipe his eyes, and it's a napkin she's used to, you know, keep spare ribs in, and barbecued spare ribs, and he's rubbing it on his face. So there's a couple of kind of like funny moments here and there, I would say, that kind of I think are probably somewhat kind of legitimately funny. Everyone is kind of super zany. You're kind of going to know if you like this tone. Like, do you like over the top kind of like silly anime, I guess, because that's kind of similar, I suppose. I don't really watch anime, but I get that kind of maybe that vibe from it. What doesn't work, I mean, the tone of this movie is going to annoy some people, let me just say that. It is like super hyper all the time. We have these three bratty kind of daughters that just are like consistently screaming through the movie. And for a grumpy old man like myself, it's kind of irritating, I'm not gonna lie. But every single character is kind of like lampooned and kind of buffoonish and just kind of silly. There's not really any type of serious kind of moments in the movie, certainly in regards to our human characters. Even the military, they're so kind of like over the top and like goofy. You know, it's just kind of silly. So it's, in a way, it's weird because it's the actual kind of creature isn't played for laughs. It's just the kind of like, well, actually, there's one scene where the creature is like marking its territory with kind of some type of bodily fluid, shall we say. I guess that's the only joke that the actual creature had, but nonetheless, you know, it's a very kind of goofy movie. It's certainly going to be a matter of taste. And the movie is cheap. I mean, like I said, it's very much like, has these video effects. And they do look cheap. I mean, it's a 2009 film, so it's obviously getting a little bit older now, but nonetheless, it's lots of kind of drop-in Adobe effect kind of style explosions and fire and smoke, and it kind of looks like that. It kind of looks like, you know, very kind of cheap green screen on occasion. There's some, you know, cheap-looking composite shots and stuff like that. So it all looks kind of very kind of silly, cheaply done, and that sort of thing. And the movie is practically the Godzilla film. I mean, it doesn't really have much else with it. I mean, it's not trying to do anything like outside of what hasn't been done before it, which begs the question, really, why even make it? I mean, it just seems like, I think the predecessor, Reigo, at least had a little bit of an original sort of story. It was against like a warship or something. I haven't seen that one, to be fair. But yeah, this one just seems like the original Godzilla movie. It almost seems like, why make a considerably cheaper version of something that already exists? But we've seen it been done in kind of Western films, so I shouldn't complain too much about it. Ultimately, it's kind of a one-note joke. The monster scenes are okay, certainly lots of kind of chaos and destruction, but it's not like it's, the effects are particularly kind of strong here, let me just say that. Overall, I have to be honest with you, I'll give this one a 4 out of 10. It's probably okay if you like that sort of style of Japanese kind of like content, but I think for most people, the weird kind of silly tone might put people off, and the kind of coupled with the kind of like just the sort of the chaos and stuff and the CGI kind of explosions and things like that, it may not be for everyone. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.